Captain Rebecca Anderson stood at the helm of the UES Hope, her reflection ghosting against the quantum glass viewport. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, broken only by the soft chirp of monitoring systems and the occasional whispered command. They all felt it, the weight of being humanity's last, best chance. Signal incoming from Vector 7, Captain. Communications Officer Lisa Torres's voice cracked slightly. It's another colony gone dark. Anderson's fingers dug into the polished obsidian of her command rail. Vector 7 meant the Vraxians were moving faster than anyone had predicted. 6 months since first contact, and already a third of humanity's outer colonies had fallen silent. The giant screens surrounding the bridge displayed a galaxy map dotted with red markers, each one a testament to their failure to protect their own. "Play the last transmission," Anderson ordered, her voice steadied, despite the churning in her gut. The crew needed her strength now more than ever. The holographic display flickered to life in the center of the bridge. A colonial administrator appeared, his face covered in blood and grime. "This is Gamma Station. They're unlike anything we've ever seen. Our weapons pass right through their shields like they're not even there. Some kind of hive mind technology we can't." Static consumed his image for a moment. "If anyone receives this, don't send help. They're using our distress signals to find our next targets. Just run. Run as far as you." The transmission cut out. "Add it to the others," Anderson said quietly. Torres nodded, and another red dot appeared on the map. The bridge crew had started calling it the Galaxy of Blood. Each dot represented thousands of lives lost, millions of dreams shattered. The Hope itself was humanity's response to the Vraxian threat, a ship built in secret even before first contact, based on theories that seemed paranoid at the time. Now those theories felt like prophecy. The vessel combined bleeding-edge human quantum technology with design elements that seemed to defy physics. It was beautiful, dangerous, and completely untested in actual combat. "Captain." Torres suddenly straightened in her chair. "Priority transmission from New Eden. It's different from the others." Anderson felt a chill run down her spine. New Eden was their furthest colony, a testament to human determination, located in what most species considered uninhabitable space. "On screen," she commanded. The hologram this time showed a school basement. Children huddled together in the dim light, their teachers trying to maintain calm. But what struck Anderson wasn't the visual, it was the audio. They were praying. Not screaming, not begging for help, but praying together in quiet, determined voices. "Our Father, who art in heaven." The ancient words echoed across the bridge, spoken by young voices that somehow refused to show fear. "And deliver us from evil." Multiple Vraxian signatures detected near New Eden. Tactical Officer James Murphy reported, his hands dancing across his console. 3 dreadnoughts, standard extinction pattern. Anderson straightened, her decision made before she even fully processed the implications. Plot accords to New Eden. Emergency quantum jump. "Captain," her XO, Commander David Hayes, stepped closer and lowered his voice. "The quantum drive hasn't been tested at that range. We could end up scattered across half the galaxy." Anderson's eyes never left the hologram of the praying children. "Look at them, David. They're not just praying to God. They're praying to us, to humanity, to anyone who might be listening." She turned to face her crew, raising her voice. "I don't know about you, but I'm damn well going to answer that prayer." The bridge erupted in activity. They all knew the odds. They all knew this could be a one-way trip. But they also knew what made humans different from the Vraxians. They chose their unity, they chose their battles, and they chose their sacrifices. "Ghost Walker," Anderson called to her navigation officer. "Show me what this quantum drive can really do." Michael Reynolds cracked his knuckles, a faint smile playing across his face as his hands hovered over the quantum navigation controls. "Time to make the impossible possible, Captain. That's what humans do best." New Eden's prayer continued to echo across the bridge as the Hope's engines began to hum with power. They were about to attempt the longest quantum jump in human history, and the lives of millions hung in the balance. You can't plot quantum paths like they're subway routes, Michael "Ghost Walker" Reynolds argued, his fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. The aliens got it all wrong with their calculations. The quantum realm, it sings. The Hope's bridge crew watched as their navigation officer closed his eyes, swaying slightly as if listening to music only he could hear. Captain Anderson had seen this before, the almost trance-like state that earned Reynolds his nickname. Some called it madness. She called it humanity's secret weapon. Traditional jump calculations put New Eden at least 3 weeks away. Commander Hayes noted, examining the conventional navigation displays. Even with our advanced drive, we're looking at 2 days, Reynolds interrupted, his eyes still closed. Maybe less. The bridge fell silent. Hayes cleared his throat. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would. Show me, Anderson commanded, cutting off the protest. She'd learned long ago that impossible was just another word for not yet attempted. Reynolds's hands danced across the quantum interface, leaving trails of light in their wake. The holographic display transformed, showing not the rigid paths of conventional space travel, but something more akin to a river system, currents and eddies of quantum possibility. Most species try to force their way through quantum space, Reynolds explained, his voice taking on an almost dreamy quality. But it's like trying to swim upstream. We can ride the currents instead. Here, his finger traced a complex path that seemed to fold in on itself. And here, the quantum tide is strong today. Lieutenant Murphy at Tactical frowned at his readings. Sir, these calculations, they don't make any sense. According to standard physics, this should tear the ship apart. Standard physics. Reynolds smiled. When did humans ever settle for standard anything? Anderson studied the proposed route. It looked like madness, a twisted path that seemed to bend reality itself. But she'd learned to trust Reynolds's instincts. More than that, she'd learned to trust humanity's unique ability to push beyond the supposedly possible. Engineering, status of the quantum drive, she called. Chief Engineer Wilson's voice crackled over the comm. Spooled up and ready, Captain. But I've got to warn you. A jump this complex, this long, we're in uncharted territory. Story of our species, Anderson replied. She turned to Reynolds. Ghost Walker, can you guarantee this will work? He finally opened his eyes, and there was something ancient in them. Something that reminded Anderson of sailors who could read the stars and shamans who could speak to storms. Captain, I can't guarantee we'll survive. But I guarantee you this. No other species in the galaxy would even attempt it. That's what makes us human. Anderson nodded slowly, feeling the weight of command settle on her shoulders. The lives of her crew, the fate of New Eden, perhaps the future of humanity itself, all resting on the intuition of one man who could feel quantum currents like others felt the wind. All hands, this is the captain, she announced shipwide. We're about to attempt something never before achieved in human history. Our brothers and sisters on New Eden are counting on us. They don't need perfection. They need a miracle, and delivering miracles is a human specialty. She turned to Reynolds. Take us in, Ghost Walker. Show us what impossible looks like. Reynolds's hands moved with surgical precision across the controls. The Hope's quantum drive began to hum, its pitch rising until it seemed to resonate with human bone itself. Warning indicators flashed across every screen, the ship's computer attempting to apply conventional physics to unconventional methods. Quantum alignment in 3, Reynolds called out, his voice steady. 2, 1. Reality bent. The stars outside stretched like taffy, twisted like ribbons, then transformed into something human eyes were never meant to process. The Hope shuddered, its frame groaning as it rode quantum currents that no other species had ever dared to navigate. Through it all, Reynolds conducted their passage like a maestro leading an orchestra through an impossible symphony. His fingers danced, his body swayed, and the ship followed his lead through the quantum depths. They were riding the lightning now, sailing the storms between realities. And somewhere ahead, beyond the impossible, New Eden was waiting. Deep in quantum space, the Hope twisted through reality like a swimmer navigating underwater currents. In the ship's research lab, Security Chief Jessica Winters stared at the containment chamber housing their only piece of salvaged Vraxian technology, a communication node recovered from a battlefield where humans had, briefly, held their ground. "Run it again," she ordered, frustration evident in her voice. For 6 hours straight, they'd been trying to understand why the node kept malfunctioning. The device would work perfectly until any human got within 5 meters, then descend into chaos. Dr. Riley, recently summoned from engineering, scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Maybe we're thinking about this backwards. Instead of trying to stop the interference, let's measure exactly what happens when you approach it." Winters nodded and stepped toward the node. The effect was immediate. The device's crystalline structure, usually pulsing with ordered patterns of light, began to fluctuate wildly. The closer she got, the more erratic it became. "Wait," Riley muttered, eyes fixed on his readings. "That's not random interference. Those patterns, they'd match your neural activity." He looked up, excitement breaking through his usual cynicism. "Do it again, but this time, think about something specific, something emotional." Winters raised an eyebrow but complied. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, about the promise she'd made to return home. The node's patterns shifted dramatically. "Holy shit," Riley breathed. "Holy shit, Captain Anderson needs to see this immediately." 10 minutes later, the lab was crowded with senior staff. Even Reynolds had left his quantum navigation post to his second, drawn by the urgency in Riley's voice. "Watch this," Riley announced. He nodded to Winters, who approached the node again. The device's disruption was displayed on the main screen, alongside a reading of her neural patterns. "Now, Jessica, think about something else. Something angry." Winters thought about the colonies they'd lost. The node's disruption pattern changed completely. "They're not just linked. They're identical," Riley explained, pointing to the overlapping wavelengths. "Our brainwaves don't just interfere with their tech. They actively override it. Every human thought, every emotion, every prayer. It's all broadcasting on exactly the right frequency to disrupt their hive mind." Anderson leaned forward, her eyes intense. "You're saying our minds are naturally tuned to interfere with their communication system?" "Better than that," Riley grinned. "I think this is why they're really attacking us. We're not just a threat to their territory. We're a threat to their entire way of being. Every human colony, every human mind, is like static in their perfect signal. They can't expand with us out here broadcasting our messy, emotional, individual thoughts across space." Commander Hayes frowned. "But why? What makes human consciousness so different?" "Free will," Reynolds spoke up suddenly, his voice distant as if he was still half listening to quantum currents. "Their hive mind is built on perfect unity, perfect obedience. But humans," he smiled, "we choose. Every thought, every feeling, every action. It's all chosen. That creates patterns they can't predict or control." "And New Eden?" Anderson asked, her mind racing ahead to the implications. Riley's expression turned grim. "Those prayers we heard. They're not just affecting the local Vraxian ships. They're broadcasting across quantum space like a beacon. Hundreds of humans, all choosing to focus their thoughts and emotions in one direction. It must be driving their hive mind insane." Winters stepped back from the node, her face set with determination. "So we're not just racing to save the colony. We're proving they were right to be afraid of us." "More than that," Riley added, his hands flying over the console. "If we could amplify this effect, manipulate it somehow." He paused, looking at the quantum drive specifications. "Captain, I have an idea. It's completely insane, probably suicidal, and definitely against several laws of physics." Anderson's lips curved into a fierce smile. "In other words, It's perfectly human. Tell me everything." As Riley began explaining his theory, the Hope continued its impossible journey through quantum space. They were no longer just carrying humanity's best weapons and technology. They were carrying the one thing the Vraxians truly feared: the unpredictable, uncontrollable power of human consciousness itself. And in the distance, New Eden's prayers continued to echo across the quantum void, creating ripples that would soon become a tsunami. The Hope tore back into normal space like a bullet through silk, quantum energies cascading off its hull in waves of impossible color. Reynolds sagged in his chair, exhausted but triumphant. They'd made it. Then they saw New Eden. "Dear God," Commander Hayes whispered. The colony world hung in space like a jewel wrapped in fire. 3 Vraxian dreadnoughts, each one nearly the size of Earth's moon, formed a triangle around the planet, their weapons painting the atmosphere with apocalyptic light. But something was wrong with their formation. "Look at their positioning." Anderson leaned forward, her tactical training kicking in. "That's not their standard extinction pattern." Lieutenant Murphy's fingers flew across his console. "Confirmed, Captain. Their formation keeps shifting. They're trying to maintain their triangle, but they keep drifting out of alignment." Through the quantum glass viewport, they could see it happening. The massive ships would begin their precise geometric positioning, only to suddenly veer off course, their movements becoming erratic before slowly correcting. "It's the prayers," Riley called from his station, where he'd been monitoring the colony's transmissions. "Put it on speaker. Everyone needs to hear this." The bridge filled with voices, hundreds, maybe thousands of them. Not just from the school they'd heard before, but from across the colony. Churches, homes, shelters, every voice raised in desperate hope, in defiance of the death hanging above them. "Their minds are connected," Reynolds said, his quantum-attuned senses picking up patterns others couldn't see. "Not like the Vraxians, not forced, but chosen, united." He pointed to the nearest dreadnought. "Watch what happens when they pray together." The voices grew stronger, more unified, and the massive ship actually shuddered in space, its perfect alignment completely disrupted. "They can't maintain their hive-mind coordination," Riley explained, excitement breaking through his exhaustion. "The combined human consciousness is creating too much interference. That's why they haven't fired their main weapons. They can't get stable enough to target properly." Anderson's mind raced with possibilities. "Murphy, what's their shield coverage looking like?" "Fragmented, Captain. They're having to constantly adjust to maintain any protection at all. I'm seeing gaps, there and there." He highlighted sections on the tactical display. "But we have to get impossibly close to exploit them." "Impossible," Anderson smiled grimly. "My favorite kind of possible." "Reynolds, can you get us in close?" Through that chaos, Ghostwalker studied the quantum currents swirling around the massive ships, disrupted by both their hive mind and the human prayers fighting against it. "It'll be like threading a needle in a hurricane." While blindfolded and drunk, he grinned. "Give me 5 minutes." "Engineering," Anderson Cater calm. "How's our quantum core holding up?" "Ready for round 2, Captain," Wilson reported. "But whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. The colony's shields are failing sector by sector." Anderson stood, her decision made. "All hands, battle stations. This is what we came for." She turned to her crew. "Murphy, I want solutions for those shield gaps. Hayes, coordinate with engineering. I want every scrap of power we can squeeze out of those engines. Reynolds," she paused, "think you can make those dreadnoughts dance?" "Oh, they'll dance all right." Reynolds cracked his knuckles. "Might even teach them some new steps." The Hope's engines roared to life, its quantum-enhanced systems pushing against the very fabric of space. On the planet's surface, the prayers continued, each human voice adding to the chaos disrupting the Vraxian fleet's perfect unity. "Incoming transmission from the lead dreadnought," Torres reported. "Put it through." The alien voice that filled the bridge was not the expected mechanical harmony of the hive mind, but something fractured, almost frightened. You are wrong. Imperfect. Your thoughts, they poison unity. Dan right we do, Anderson replied, her voice hard as steel. Humanity's got a message for your hive mind. Let me make sure you hear it clearly. She nodded to Reynolds, and the Hope dove into battle, carrying humanity's answer to those who would enforce their version of perfection on the galaxy. Above New Eden, the impossible was about to become reality. Again, the Hope shuddered as another Vraxian energy blast grazed its shields. In engineering, Dr. Thomas, Mad Dog, Riley ignored the chaos, his attention fixed on the quantum core's readouts. The massive cylinder of crystalline energy pulsed with patterns he'd never seen before, patterns that looked disturbingly similar to human brainwaves. You're seeing this too, right? He asked Wilson, who stood beside him, mouth agape. I'm not just going crazy from quantum exposure. The chief engineer shook his head. If you're crazy, we both are. The core's resonating with them. He gestured to the neural pattern display, showing the combined prayers from New Eden. It's amplifying them somehow. Riley's hands flew across the controls, his mind racing ahead to possibilities that should have been impossible. Get me the captain. Now. Moments later, Anderson's voice filled engineering. Make it fast, Riley. We're a little busy up here. Captain, I know how to save New Eden. Riley took a deep breath. But you're not going to like it. He explained his theory as quickly as he could. The quantum core wasn't just powering their ship. It was acting as a receiver, picking up and amplifying human consciousness itself. With modifications, they could turn it into something unprecedented. A weapon that would use the crew's combined consciousness to shatter the Vraxian hive mind completely. The catch? Anderson asked, knowing there had to be one. It could kill us all, Riley admitted. Best case scenario, we all wake up with massive neural trauma. Worst case, we don't wake up at all. The energy feedback would be like running a nuclear reactor through our brains. The bridge fell silent. Another blast rocked the ship. How many people would you need? Anderson finally asked. That's just it. Riley ran his fingers through his disheveled hair. It has to be voluntary. The quantum resonance only works with freely chosen unity. I need everyone, every single person on this ship, to choose to connect their consciousness to the core. 300 people, Hayes's voice cut in. You're talking about asking 300 people to risk their minds on an untested weapon. 2 minutes to shield failure on the colony. Murphy called out from tactical. Riley closed his eyes. Captain, remember what Reynolds said about humans being different because we choose. This is the ultimate choice. Perfect unity, not forced like the Vraxians, but chosen, freely given. Every mind, every soul, every prayer. Connected through the quantum core, Reynolds finished, understanding dawning in his voice, like a prayer turned up to 11. Riley nodded, even though they couldn't see him. Exactly. The Vraxians' hive mind is based on suppressing individuality. This would be the opposite. Hundreds of individual humans choosing to connect, each mind remaining unique but working in harmony. The quantum feedback would be devastating. Wilson finished, looking at the calculations. It would hit their hive mind like a tsunami of pure consciousness. Another blast. Warning lights flashed across every console. How long to implement? Anderson asked. 20 minutes to modify the core, Riley answered. But Captain, everyone needs to understand what they're risking. This goes beyond duty, beyond orders. It has to be their choice. Anderson's voice hardened with determination. Patch me through to all hands. When she spoke again, her voice reached every corner of the Hope. This is your captain speaking. In the next 5 minutes, every one of you will face the most important choice of your lives. Dr. Riley has a plan to save New Eden, but it requires something unprecedented. The voluntary connection of every mind on this ship through the quantum core. The risks are extreme. Neural damage. Permanent cognitive impairment. Death. She paused, letting that sink in. I cannot order this. Will not order this. This must be your choice. Those who wish to participate, report to the mess hall. Those who don't, no one will think less of you. Riley held his breath, waiting. Then the responses started flooding in. Not just from the bridge crew, but from every section of the ship. Engineers, medical staff, security teams, even the maintenance crews. Every single one said yes. Well, Mad Dog. Wilson clapped him on the shoulder. Better start those modifications. We've got some prayers to answer. The Hope's mess hall had never been designed to hold the entire crew at once. Now, with 300 humans packed into the space, the air thrummed with nervous energy and determination. Engineers had stripped the walls bare, running quantum conduits along every surface. The crystalline veins pulsed with the same eerie light as the ship's core. Final calibrations complete, Riley announced, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. He'd worked miracles in the past 20 minutes, turning a dining hall into what he dubbed the prayer chamber. Everyone needs to maintain physical contact with at least 2 other people. The quantum resonance flows better through connected consciousness. Captain Anderson stood in the center of the room, watching her crew arrange themselves in concentric circles. There was Lieutenant Murphy, still wearing the burns from his last battle station. Dr. Chen from Medical, her hand steady as she helped position others. Young Ensign Rodriguez, who'd lied about his age to join the mission. Every face told a story of sacrifice. Colony shields at 12%. Hayes's voice crackled through the comm. He'd insisted on staying on the bridge, maintaining their defensive position until the last possible moment. 2 Vraxian dreadnoughts moving into final firing position. Status of the quantum core. Anderson called out. Riley checked his modified engineering tablet. Ready as it'll ever be. Captain. He hesitated. Once we start, there's no going back. The neural feedback will build exponentially. We'll have to ride it out, no matter what happens. Anderson nodded, then raised her voice. Look around you. Look at the faces of your crewmates. Remember them. Remember why we're here. She touched the quantum conduit nearest to her, feeling its energy hum through her bones. The Vraxians think unity means submission, conformity, the death of self. We're about to show them what real unity looks like. Through the ship's speakers, they could still hear the prayers from New Eden. Children's voices mixed with adults, a symphony of hope and desperation reaching across space. Join hands. Riley commanded. Remember, this has to be voluntary. Don't just accept the connection. Choose it. Embrace it. 300 pairs of hands clasped together. The quantum conduits brightened, responding to the increasing neural resonance. Whatever happens, Anderson said softly, I want you to know. We know, Captain, Reynolds interrupted from nearby, managing a grin despite the sweat beading on his forehead. We all know. The quantum core's hum rose to a fever pitch. Riley's voice shook as he called out readings. Neural synchronization at 30%. 40. 60. Anderson felt it starting. First like static in her mind, then like music. She could sense others' thoughts brushing against her consciousness, not invading, but sharing. Fear, courage, determination, love. Hundreds of minds, each remaining distinct while joining in harmony. Synchronization at 80%. Riley's eyes widened. Captain, the quantum field is expanding beyond predicted parameters. It's connecting with New Eden. Through their linked consciousness, the crew felt it. Thousands of minds from the surface below, their prayers joining the symphony. The quantum conduits blazed like captured stars. Holy shit, Riley breathed. The colonists, they're amplifying us. Their prayers, they're choosing to join. The Vraxian ships loomed on the view screens, their weapons charging for a final strike. But their perfect formation was already breaking, disrupted by the unprecedented wave of human consciousness building in their midst. Anderson closed her eyes, feeling the combined will of her crew flowing through her like an electric current. In that moment, she understood what they were about to unleash. Not just a weapon, but a testament to what humanity truly was. Billions of individual souls, each choosing their own path, yet capable of coming together in moments of crisis to create something greater than themselves. Now, she whispered, the word carried through hundreds of minds simultaneously. For Earth, for New Eden, for humanity. Riley threw the final switch. The quantum core erupted with blinding light as 300 human minds, backed by thousands of praying colonists, chose to become one, not in submission, but in defiance. Their combined consciousness rose like a tide, ready to show the galaxy what humanity's answer to extinction looked like. It was time to pray. Reality fractured. The prayer bomb detonated not with thunder or fire, but with pure consciousness made manifest. 300 minds aboard the Hope, joined by thousands from New Eden's surface, burst outward in a wave of human thought and emotion that defied the laws of physics themselves. Time seemed to stop. In that eternal moment, Captain Anderson experienced something beyond description. She was herself, yet she was also every member of her crew. She felt Reynolds' intimate connection to quantum space, Riley's brilliant analytical mind racing with calculations, Tori's fierce love for her family back on Earth. Every fear, every hope, every memory. They flowed together like rivers joining an ocean, each remaining distinct yet part of something greater. Then she felt the Vraxians. Their hive mind was like a vast crystalline structure, beautiful in its perfection, but terrifying in its rigidity. As the wave of human consciousness struck their ships, that perfect structure began to crack. Through the Hope's sensors, transformed by the quantum resonance into something far more intimate, they watched it happen. The first Dreadnought's crew collapsed as individuality crashed through their neural network like a tsunami. Some Vraxians screamed, their first truly individual sounds in generations. Others wept with the newfound ability to feel personal emotion. Their minds, Reynolds gasped, his voice somehow carrying through both air and shared consciousness. Their awakening. He was right. The prayer bomb hadn't just disrupted the hive mind. It had shattered the very concept of forced unity. Each Vraxian was experiencing something they had never known. Choice. Through their connected consciousness, the Hope's crew witnessed a miracle. A young Vraxian gunner, overwhelmed by her first individual thought, chose not to fire her weapon. An engineer, experiencing emotion for the first time, chose to feel compassion. A commander, suddenly aware of himself as a distinct being, chose to question orders. The second Dreadnought spun out of formation as its crew struggled with their newfound individuality. Warning lights flashed across its hull as systems dependent on perfect neural synchronization began to fail. The third ship. Riley's thoughts reached them all. Look at the third ship. The final Dreadnought hung motionless in space. Its crew had made perhaps the most human choice of all. They had chosen to stop fighting completely, overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of individual existence. But the victory came at a cost. Every human mind connected to the quantum core burned with the strain of maintaining such impossible unity. Anderson felt her consciousness stretching, transforming, touching realms of existence she had never imagined. Through her connection to the crew, she felt their pain, their determination, their unwavering commitment to seeing this through. "Hold on," she commanded, the words carrying through neural pathways rather than air. "Hold together. Show them what humanity really is." The prayer bomb's effects rippled outward, carrying the essence of human consciousness to the farthest reaches of the Vraxian fleet. Everywhere it touched, the hive mind cracked and individual thought bloomed like flowers after a long winter. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. The quantum resonance faded. 300 minds slowly, carefully disentangled, each forever changed by what they had experienced. But they remained conscious, remained themselves, changed but unbroken by their voluntary union. Anderson opened her eyes to find tears streaming down her face. Around her, the crew was doing the same, each processing the profound intimacy they had just shared. They had touched something profound, something that went beyond mere victory in battle. Through the viewport, they watched as the Vraxian dreadnought slowly, uncertainly began to retreat. Their perfect formation was gone, replaced by the awkward movements of ships whose crews were learning to operate as individuals for the first time. Torres's voice cracked as she spoke aloud, the words feeling strange after such deep neural connection. Did we just teach an entire species how to think for themselves? No, Anderson replied, her voice filled with quiet wonder. We taught them how to choose for themselves. That's what makes us human. Not just our thoughts, but our choices. Above New Eden, the dawn was breaking. And in the light of that new day, humanity had proven that their greatest weakness, their chaotic, emotional, individual nature, was actually their greatest strength. The prayer had been answered. The impossible had been achieved. And the galaxy would never be the same. In the days following the Battle of New Eden, change rippled across human and Vraxian space alike. The Hope floated in high orbit, its quantum core humming with new harmonies as repair crews worked to restore systems strained by the impossible. Captain Anderson stood in her ready room, watching New Eden's sun rise over the colony below. The neural connection had faded, but echoes remained, ghost impressions of her crew's thoughts and feelings that surfaced in quiet moments. She wasn't the only one. Every survivor of the prayer bomb carried pieces of each other now, a voluntary unity that had transformed them all. Latest report from the surface, Captain, Commander Hayes announced, entering with a datapad. He paused, a slight smile crossing his face. You're thinking about coffee. Dark roast, 2 sugars. Anderson returned the smile. These moments happened frequently now, one crew member picking up fragments of another's thoughts. And you're worried about your daughter's recital next month. She turned from the viewport. The report. The colony's rebuilding efforts are ahead of schedule. And, he hesitated, we're getting unprecedented signals from Vraxian space, thousands of them. All individual transmissions, not hive mind broadcasts. They're learning to speak for themselves, Reynolds added, entering the room. The ghost walker moved differently now, more grounded, as if his connection to quantum space had been tempered by his connection to human consciousness. Their ships are changing too. New designs, built for individual crews rather than hive mind control. Anderson nodded, unsurprised. The prayer bomb hadn't just disrupted the Vraxian hive mind. It had shown them an entirely new way of existing. And our crew. Dr. Riley's latest scans show the neural changes are permanent, Hayes reported. We're not connected like we were during the prayer bomb, but, he tapped his temple, we're not the same as we were before, either. We're better, Reynolds said firmly. Different, but better. We understand now, really understand, what it means to be human. To be individual, yet capable of choosing unity. Anderson picked up a small crystal on her desk, a piece of the quantum core's outer shell that had cracked during the detonation. It still hummed faintly with residual energy. The Admiralty wants to replicate what we did. They're calling for volunteers to crew more ships like the Hope. They don't understand. Reynolds shook his head. You can't force this kind of unity. It has to be chosen, freely given, like prayer. Which is exactly what I told them. Anderson set the crystal down. But I also told them something else. Humanity just proved we're capable of something extraordinary, not just technological advancement, but spiritual evolution. We showed the galaxy that true strength comes not from enforced perfection, but from the beautiful chaos of individual choice. A chime sounded, the town hall of New Eden, restored and ringing across the colony. Through their shared neural echoes, the crew felt rather than heard the colonists' response. Prayers of gratitude, of hope, of determination to build something new. The Vraxians are retreating from all human space, Hayes reported, checking another message. But not out of fear this time. Out of respect. And he smiled. Curiosity. They want to learn from us, understand how we maintain our individuality while still working together. We'll teach them, Anderson said firmly. Not through force, not through Hivemans or neural control, but through choice, through prayer, through cooperation, through all the messy, chaotic, beautiful things that make us human. Reynolds moved to the viewport, watching New Eden's second sun beginning to rise. You know what the quantum currents feel like now. They're different. Like the whole galaxy is humming with possibility. Anderson joined him, feeling the faint echoes of her crew's consciousness brushing against her thoughts. They had faced the impossible and emerged transformed, not through submission to a higher power, but through the voluntary union of free minds choosing to work as one. The hope had lived up to its name, and in doing so, it had written a new chapter in human history, one that proved their greatest strength lay not in their technology or their weapons, but in their capacity to remain individual while choosing to stand together. Above New Eden, a new day was dawning, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what real unity looked like.